Hey Chivis, I'm Ivy, and today we're talking about James Kim's wilderness ordeal and Judy Smith's unsolved murder. If you enjoy stories like this, hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's go! When a wilderness trip turns dangerous, the decisive moment is often not the arrival of the storm. It is the earlier moment when someone decides the warning can wait, the road must continue, or help is probably just beyond the next bend. In this documentary, we will follow two documented cases where ordinary choices collided with difficult terrain. We will separate confirmed facts from later theories and ask a harder question than who made the worst mistake. We will ask how danger grew step by step until there was almost no safe option left. Act 1. The geography of a bad decision. Maps are useful because they simplify the world. In remote country, that simplification can become dangerous. A line on paper may conceal snow, elevation, switchbacks, locked gates, washed out surfaces, or a distance far greater than it appears. Even a phone signal can create false confidence. A connection may be brief, a location may be imprecise, and silence may mean many different things. The cases ahead are not lessons in blaming victims. People make decisions with incomplete information, tired children, changing weather, limited equipment, and the belief that a problem can still be corrected. Hindsight gives us the ending before we examine the choice. Real emergencies offer no such advantage. The recurring pattern is false reassurance. An open gate suggests a road is usable. A familiar-looking canyon suggests the car is nearby. A city trip suggests that a forest detour will be brief. These signals are not necessarily lies. They are simply incomplete. The tragedy begins when an incomplete signal is treated as a guarantee. Act 2. The vehicle that became a shelter. In late November of 2006, James Kim, his wife Kati, and their two young daughters were driving south from the Seattle area toward their home in the San Francisco Bay Area. They had hoped to travel toward the Oregon coast after Thanksgiving. Instead, a routing mistake sent them toward southwestern Oregon, where James chose another road in the hope that it would eventually lead west. That road, known as the Bear Camp Road area, or Bureau of Land Management Road 34-38, was a logging route in rugged country. It was not suitable for ordinary winter travel, and it was reportedly closed, or intended to be closed, for the season, but a gate was left open. To a passing driver, that physical fact could reasonably look like permission to continue. The family drove roughly 23 miles along the road before snow and worsening conditions stopped the vehicle around the early morning hours of November 26. Their car could go no further. They were far from towns, without camping supplies, and responsible for a 4-year-old child and a 7-month-old infant. They stayed with the vehicle for several days. Fuel was used for warmth, and when that ran out, they burned magazines and other available material. They searched nearby for dry wood. At one point, they burned the vehicle's tires, creating heavy black smoke in the hope that someone might see it. No one did. The family was reported missing after they failed to arrive, and their credit card activity stopped. Investigators traced their known route, but the logging road was not the route people expected them to take. A brief cellular connection or attempted connection helped narrow the search area, even though the region was generally treated as a dead zone. On December 4th, a search aircraft located Kati and the children near the vehicle. They survived. James, however, had left 2 days earlier to find assistance. He had a light jacket and unsuitable footwear, and he believed the town shown on the map was only a few miles away. The actual distance was far greater. James traveled approximately 16 miles before collapsing and dying from exposure and hypothermia. His body was found on December 6, reportedly near an empty lodge that could have offered shelter. That detail is haunting, but it should not be turned into a certainty that staying would definitely have saved him. Survival outcomes depend on weather, health, shelter, supplies, and timing. What can be said more securely is that the vehicle was visible from the air, while a person on foot was much harder to locate. In a stranded vehicle emergency, remaining with the car is often an active survival strategy, not passivity. The vehicle provides shelter, a recognizable search target, insulation from wind, and sometimes equipment that can be repurposed. There are exceptions: fire, flooding, immediate structural danger, or a clearly marked and safe route may change the decision. But in remote winter terrain, leaving without a reliable plan can turn one emergency into two. The Kim case was not caused by one open gate, one long turn, or one decision to walk. It was a chain. The route seemed available. The terrain was underestimated. The weather reduced the margin for error. Supplies were inadequate for unplanned stay. Then the map made help appear closer than it was. Each step narrowed the options for the next one. Act 3. The missing person who was found, but not the answer. Judy Smith's case begins in a completely different setting. In 1997, Smith was a 50-year-old nurse from Newton, Massachusetts. She traveled with her husband to Philadelphia while he attended a professional conference. She planned to sightsee alone during the day and return later. On April 10th, her husband came back to the hotel and found that she had not returned. At first, the absence might have seemed temporary. As the evening passed, concern grew. Judy had no mobile phone, and the couple had expected to meet friends. Her husband contacted family and authorities, and a search began in Philadelphia. There were reported sightings, including possible sightings near a bus station and other public places. Such accounts can be useful leads, but they are not all equally reliable. A witness may remember a face, a quote, or a conversation only after learning that a person is missing. Publicity can unconsciously reshape memory. That does not make every sighting false. It means each one requires careful corroboration. Investigators confirmed that Judy had traveled to Philadelphia, but the reason she disappeared remained unclear. Theories emerged, including the possibility that she had left voluntarily. None of those possibilities, by themselves, explain what happened next. Months later, on September 7th, hunters found human remains in Pisgah National Forest in North Carolina, roughly 10 hours from Philadelphia by road. The remains were scattered around a shallow burial area. Dental records identified the woman as Judy Smith. The medical investigation determined that she had died in a homicide involving stabbing. Her identity had been solved, but the central mystery had not. Why had she gone to North Carolina? How had she traveled there? Who had encountered her? And why was she carrying some personal property rather than appearing to have been killed during an obvious robbery? Investigators received reports of possible sightings in the Asheville area. Some people remembered a woman who said she was from Boston and whose husband was an attorney. There were also reports involving a vehicle and attempts to find temporary lodging. These details may suggest movement, but they do not establish motive. They cannot prove an affair, a planned disappearance, or the identity of a killer. That distinction matters. A person can be identified without the circumstances of death being understood. A homicide can be established without a suspect being established. And a strange travel pattern can remain strange without becoming evidence for a favorite theory. The Smith investigation also shows why private assumptions can be harmful. A spouse's appearance, health, or personality does not prove innocence or guilt. A witness's impression of someone's mood does not reconstruct an entire journey. The evidence must carry the conclusion, and sometimes the honest conclusion is that a killing remains unsolved. Act 4. What rescuers can and cannot recover. Search and rescue is often imagined as a contest between professionals and nature. In reality, it is also a contest against time, visibility, information, and the size of the search area. Rescuers need a last known location, a route, clothing details, vehicle information, medical concerns, and a realistic understanding of what the missing people may have chosen to do. The Kim family became easier to find once investigators connected their travel records with a possible phone signal and considered the unlikely logging road. Kati and the children were located from the air because the vehicle created a larger, more stable target. James was much harder to trace after he left. This does not mean rescuers failed simply because one person died. Weather and terrain can limit aircraft, communications can be incomplete, agencies may begin with inaccurate assumptions, and families sometimes do not know the precise route taken. Every missing person search is built from fragments. The same principle applies before an emergency begins. A realistic itinerary, extra food and water, suitable clothing, emergency communication, and a clear turnaround rule do not eliminate risk, they create time. Time is the resource that allows a bad decision to be reversed. A warning is valuable only when it changes behavior. A forecast is useful only when it is treated as part of the terrain. And a phone is helpful only if people remember that coverage, battery power, and location accuracy are all limited. Act 5. The difference between a story and evidence. Wilderness tragedies attract explanations because uncertainty is uncomfortable. When facts are missing, people fill the gaps with motive, character judgments, or comparisons to other crimes. Sometimes those ideas later prove useful. Often they do not. A prosecution theory is not the same as a verdict. A body camera recording is not the same as a complete investigation. A witness statement is not the same as forensic confirmation. A family account may explain what relatives believed, while a court filing may describe what investigators allege, and an autopsy may answer a different question entirely. Recent or alleged cases deserve even more caution. If names, charges, court outcomes, or recordings cannot be verified through official agencies, court documents, or reliable contemporary reporting, they should not be presented as established fact. The same standard applies to claims that someone intended to harm a child, that the death was deliberate, or that the victim would certainly have survived after making another choice. The responsible question is not, what is the most shocking explanation? It is, which parts are documented, which parts are disputed, and what remains unknown. That approach may feel less dramatic, but it is more useful. It protects victims from mockery, families from unsupported accusations, and audiences from mistaking confidence for proof. Flesh synthesis. When proximity becomes an illusion. Both major cases revolve around proximity. The Kim family believed a usable road and a nearby destination were within reach. James believed the town on his map was only a short walk away. Judy Smith's disappearance created a gap between Philadelphia and North Carolina that investigators had to bridge through records, sightings, and physical evidence. In each situation, the apparent distance was not the real distance. Snow changed the road, canyon terrain changed direction, uncertainty changed the meaning of a sighting. The environment did not need to look impossible. It only needed to hide the information people were relying on. That is why wilderness preparation is less about toughness than information management. Know where the route ends, know what conditions can close it, tell someone the plan, carry enough to remain in place. Set a turnaround time before fatigue and excitement begin negotiating with it, and if the plan fails, make the new objective survival, not completion. Conclusion. The most disturbing feature of these cases is not that the people involved made extraordinary choices. It is that the choices were understandable in the moment. An open gate looked reassuring. A distant town looked close. A missing traveler might still have been safe. Ordinary assumptions became dangerous when the surroundings stopped behaving ordinarily. The lesson is not that one rule guarantees survival. It is that small margins matter, preparation preserves options, and recognizing uncertainty preserves judgment. If you found this evidence-focused approach useful, you can subscribe for more documented stories and share your thoughts without turning unanswered questions into accusations. The wilderness does not always provide a clear ending. Our responsibility is to be clear about what the evidence can actually say.